California for a couple days now. Had the pleasure going around with Ron today, taking some tours of local farms here. We went to GMOs, I believe, and saw different types of citrus that I never knew existed. Whenever I travel, I always like to seek a little bit of enlightenment too, and thanks to Jim, I now know that avocado is the Aztec word for testicle. So I will go back to Texas smarter than when I left, and I will share that with the next generation. But it's really cool to be in this area to see so much diversity of agriculture. The farms are a lot smaller here than back home. It's a different world where I live, where we farm, where cotton is king. The average family farm is probably 2,000 to 3,000 acres. And that, since the 1970s, that push has always been to get bigger, and in that process we've sacrificed a lot of our quality for quantity. And I left the farm. I grew up on the farm. I'm fourth generation. My family had been in that area for almost 100 years. I live in what was my great-grandparents' original house. It was built in the 1920s. Rebuilt it. So I take a lot of pride when I did come back in 2005. I'm trying to bring more life, more vitality back to that little corner of the universe. When I did move back, I was looking at all these issues we had in farming, because there are many that a farmer faces, many difficult decisions that we face, whether it's from nature, elements, financial, dealing with different aspects of whether it's government legislation or just the whole commercialization of the industry in itself. So I was trying to combat high fuel prices, labor, where it was tough for us to find guys to work year-round because we were losing a lot of people to the oil field. The oil field is paying big bucks back in Texas. So there's not near as many people who want to work on the farm like 10, 20, 30 years ago. So we started planting a few fields. When I say a few fields, it was 1,000 acres in genetically modified cotton, Roundup ready cotton. So here I am thinking I'm really smart. I'm tackling these issues. I'm being progressive. I'm being, really taking advantage of the technology. So 2005, things look all right. It's not like they were higher yields, but we cut back on trips across the field. 2006, I'm planting. I'm just sitting there out in the field. And I'm looking at all these bags of seed. They're 50-pound bags. And, you got to pour those into your planter, and I'm just sitting there. And, you grow up in commercial agriculture, skulls and crossbones, chemicals. When I was a kid, we didn't think anything about it. We weren't trained. If you wore rubber gloves or a mask, you were a sissy. It's not going to hurt you. And so more skulls and crossbones didn't mean very much, but 10 years away from the farm, in my mind, I'm a little more inquisitive than when I was younger. So I started reading all these different warnings of don't touch this, don't put it in your mouth, don't get in your eyes, run to the hospital if you. I'm just going, this is seed, right? This is seed. What is it that I'm actually putting in the earth here? What is it that I'm doing? And as that year progressed and the crop grew, I began to do more and more research. I started stumbling across films, The World According to Monsanto. I was reading more books because I was also trying to understand different aspects of insects, their roles, weeds. Why do we have more insects than ever? Why do we have more weeds than ever? And yet here we were dumping more chemicals than ever. It's not like we were using less chemicals than we were 10 or 15, 20 years ago. It was more. And so that own personal drive to really find out what it was I was doing led me to discover that I was screwing up, that I was making a mistake. And a lot of people outside of agriculture, or commercial agriculture especially, people wonder how can farmers do this? And I will tell you, most farmers don't understand what they're doing. Very, very few farmers, and then when I say few, probably less than 5%, and it may even be that much, realize what GMOs are. You know, we hear the term GMO, less genetically modified organism. Well, all right, what does that mean exactly? You know, each seed has a pesticide and a herbicide gene in it existing. Okay, yeah, it's an easier way to farm. I can attest to that. It is easier. And they will market it as a cheaper way to farm. That is not the case. When this first came out, it was 10, 15 years ago, it was less expensive for farmers to use it. You plant the seed, you spray, you go do something else. You don't have to be there stressing about weeds. I mean, we're out in the fields now. We have not used GMO since 2006. We were getting ready to plant in 2007, and my dad was like, well, we need to get ready to get that Roundup seed. And I've been already writing, blogging about this for, 6 to 12 months, and I was like, yeah, about that. I'm not, I'm not planting it anymore. We're not going to use it on this farm. And my dad's a real cool guy. He's, I call him the country Buddha, kind of real quiet. And there was just that real long, awkward silence in the pickup truck where, I could see his neck getting red, and he's like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, we're not using it anymore." And it took some convincing. It wasn't like he just said okay, but the more I harp on him, it's easier to get him because I have 2 boys, and those are his grandsons. So I'm like, "You'll never see your grandchildren again if you don't go along with me." So you got to use whatever kind of diplomacy works. But now, sometimes I get really mad because my neighbors. I've had my entire garden killed by my neighbor. My garden's organic, and here on my field we've eliminated pesticides, we've eliminated genetically modified crops, we've eliminated commercial fertilizers, and then my neighbor, this was 2008 I believe, sprays Roundup one day and kills my entire garden. Tomatoes, peppers, everything I had. And so it was yet another lesson for me to learn the hard way. It's like, how do I get this point across to my neighbors? That what you do impacts me right now. Not a few years, right now, overnight. Because I can tell you that people will say, oh, it's just Roundup, it's not going to hurt you. We have more issues with herbicide drift than anything else. You hear a lot about cross-pollination of crops, things like canola, corn, and that is an issue. The case of Percy Smizer, where Monsanto has gone after him when he was doing organic canola, and they go after him for imparting on their patent, infringing upon their patent. I met Percy a few months ago, and he said this past year, 2011, was the first year he has not had to defend a lawsuit against Monsanto since 1998. And he's the rock star, in this, because he was David versus Goliath. Literally, if everyone knows who Percy Smizer is, he's like my granddad. He reminds me so much of my grandfather. He's just a guy who took a stand. And we don't have enough people that are in the farming world that are courageous enough to take this stand. There are guys who don't like Monsanto that plant their seed every year. They will cuss them, they will say everything bad against them, but they're still planting their seed. From my perspective, we can end this real quick through farmers. But it's not going to happen overnight like that. And it's not going to happen with us trying to be on different sides of the fence. Because to me, this issue is something that should transcend everything. It should transcend everyone, whether it's religion, politics, whatever. Because we all have different beliefs. We all have different things that are more important to us than others. But everybody eats. This isn't like Ovaltine or Little Debbie snack cakes. This is food. This is everything. This is every living creature. When I was laying awake, it would really haunt me that year that in 2006, last year, I had that crop going when I was educating myself, and we would still have that crop in the field. I would wake up and start freaking out about insects getting this in their bodies, and the wildlife that came in and grazed on the plants, and I'm just sitting there going, how much negative impact? Forget the money that I may make this year. It's like, how much of a negative impact did I have on the ecosystem? Whether it was the deer, any type of insect, it's like, and to think that we have 160 million acres of this right now in this country, which is the size of Texas roughly. That's how many acres of genetically modified crops we have growing in this country. 50 countries either have labeling or have banned GMOs altogether. We have neither. And here we are, America, right? We're real progressive. This is about freedom. This is about, and this, at least we have the right to know what we're eating. That's what this whole movement is about, trying to get this label, so that when you go to the grocery store, you can pick up something and you know, oh, okay, well that's genetically modified. All right, well, it's your decision up to that point, and we don't have that right now. We don't have that luxury. I mean, I went to Whole Foods for the first time in California a couple of days ago. A friend of mine called it whole paycheck. I was blown away how expensive it is out here. I understand the average family's not going to go out and spend $12 on some lettuce and a mango. And, all right, so you got that group of people. How are we going to make organics or sustainable agriculture work in this country? And it's about, to me, it starts with awareness. Because I promise you, 95% of the people in this country have no idea. The information is just now starting to get out there. And it's happening. There's several different groups. There's several different groups that are springing up now. But like I said, it doesn't matter if you're a farmer, teacher, whatever it is you do for a living. We're all have the common denominator in the fact that we put food in our bodies every day. I mean, that's the uniting factor here. So this isn't something that we should be squabbling over. I mean, we should have the right to know what we are. Is this real food or is this fake food? I mean, does this have the genetic makeup of pesticides and herbicides, or is this pure stuff that my parents or my grandparents knew was just food? And you take companies like Monsanto, it's money, it's a lot of things to them. So we don't have enough dogs in the fight when you're going up against a billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar buy or a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You can never have enough dogs in this fight, and that's what we need, are more dogs in this fight. Because it's not going to be one person who smiles with it that changes this. We need a million. We need people that care enough to know to get out and do what it takes to help others know what's happening to our food, what has happened to our food. I'm a young farmer. I was kidding earlier that I'm an endangered species. People see me out here like, oh my goodness, it's like a young farmer. Can I take a picture of you? It's like I'm going up on the wall with all these other animals that you see at the zoo. There's going to be the farmer next to the spotted owl or whatever. And that's one thing we don't realize, even as farmers, that we're handicapping ourselves as well. I mean, we can't continue to support and feed the beast and know that that's part of the problem. And to me, consumers and farmers have to be working together. There has to be a better relationship. Because you think about 20, 30 years ago, almost everybody's parents, or at least your grandparents, grew up on a farm. That's changed now. There's quite a bit of segregation between agriculture and most Americans today. There's really a disconnect. We've been trained to treat nature as a commodity. It's been more about money, and to me, it needs to be more like a quality of life. It needs to be about our health. It needs to be about what is going to last for us, because the system we have in place is not going to last. I represent less than 1% of the population in America. There's more prisoners than there are farmers in this country. In the 1930s, we were 35% of the population. I was looking at a deal on Yahoo. This was just 2 weeks ago, and there was the top 10 jobs warning people not to get into in college. 5 of them involved agriculture. Whoa. So I'm on the opposite end of that. I encourage young people trained by universities, because to me, the universities are part of the system that is broken. It needs to be fixed. And so we need more young people, even if you're not going to be a farmer, at least educating ourselves about it and becoming more aware. And you think about why do I want to leave my home, my farm, my family to even come out? And that's it. There needs to be more people spreading this message. And this impacts me on all levels, not just as a farmer, but I got kids in school. The menus in the school systems are pretty bad. I think we could all agree on that. Everything's from processed foods to soda drinks to most things that kids put in their body at an early age. It's just laced with this stuff. 80% of processed foods. You think about how corn is taken over as the main sweetener in this country with high fructose corn syrup. And so it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge we have ahead of us. But like I said, it is one we're completely capable of handling. I think that it takes, so February 18th is probably going to be the starting date. You guys will have about 60 days to collect how many signatures?
850,000.
850,000 signatures is what it's going to take in 60 days to get this on the ballot for November. That's not a number to sneeze at, so it's going to take a lot of sweat, a lot of blood, sweat, tears, whatever. The Right to Know March, which was the big march from Brooklyn to the White House steps, took place back in November. It was several people that got started there in Brooklyn. I marched with them it was a 300 or 200, don't get me lying. Long ways, 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I marched with them the last 5 or 6 days. I did about 70 miles, and some of those people marched every step of the way. You want to talk about some feet, some nasty feet? There was some hammer time going on those toes, but these, great people from all over the country. People from Germany, Italy showed up. Yeah. And we went all the way to the steps of the Capitol, or the White House, there in front. Had a big rally. It was nice. But you leave there going, this is just the beginning. It was nice. We were able to hand out literature, T-shirts, whatever, in neighborhoods in Baltimore. From New York City all the way to Baltimore and D.C. And people just getting this literature going, what? They have no idea. And to see that you're able to plant that seed in their minds, they start thinking a little bit differently the next time maybe they go to the grocery store. We had a rally in Austin right before that, part of the Rally for Real Food. And there's companies coming together. While we don't have labeling in the U.S. right now, there is a non-GMO project. Several food companies are stepping up and putting on their non-GMO. So while we don't have mandatory labeling in the U.S., there are some that are taking the next best thing and saying, well, we're not. And to me, a lot of this fight begins with what we are doing in our own homes, in our own communities, because it's really easy to just step in and go, man, things are really screwed up. And then you go back and everybody forgets about it. Or you watch a cool documentary on GMOs, or you read a book, or read clippings like, yeah, and then you forget about it because there's so many different issues going on in this country. But to me, like I said, it goes back to the food. This is food we're talking about. So if we're more independent, self-sufficient, if we grow some of our own food in our front backyard, if we're supporting community-supported agriculture, or farmers markets, and asking these questions to farmers, what do you do to your stuff? Or, are you organic? Or do you use GMOs? We begin to create some mental barriers, at least, and then we start asking our restaurants and our grocery stores and get everybody thinking about it. Because most people aren't. It's just one more thing that they see on the news. They kind of listen a little bit, but not really. So, to me, everybody that knows about this already, you're a leader in this. Whether you want to be or not, you're a leader in this. And so you get active in your neighborhood, your community, whatever.